Hallelujah. Well, as always, I'm never sure if I've always been not. I'm grateful that if that means that I'm not in flesh. And when teaching the word, I want to make sure that we're saying what saith Yah, what saith later today. Although it is teaching. So today we're going to interact with big. We're going to get through this thing. And we're going to do it. Do we have a Sharpie marker? I had one. I bring it out. I need it. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, I certainly honor Rabbi, and let me Rabbi and our leaders to Rabbi more and really honor to you, Israel. We being just honored here and for the opportunity. Glad to always see my brother. We thank you, as Morah Shemi said, for the prayers that have come forth in this time with the passing of our soul. But we know that the body is with Yah, so we have that blessing. Amen. So I don't know about anyone else, but I have been on this past year and even for the road to wholeness. This is something the Most High is working with me with. I'm going to pick it on because when y'all stand up here, y'all leave it right there and y'all teach. And I think that is so amazing. But I can't do that because that is a distraction to me. And it's like, what is that? So I'm going to pick this up if y'all don't mind. And I'm going to move this over. And I'm going to hold the microphone while I talk for now. And then when I go to the board, I can certainly put it back. I don't know. Maybe it's my ADHD. I don't know. But I have to do it that way. So I'm on a road to wholeness. And so this is probably going to be a series for me. Not just here. I have had the opportunity to speak in a women's event a couple of weeks, Sabbaths ago, and that teaching probably falls under this along with some others. But on this road to wholeness, as we know, we are currently in what I guess you would consider an off season because the feast season we finished up there with tabernacles. And a couple of weeks ago, I think Rabbis was talking about doing an introspection, a time of introspection, a time of examining ourselves. And I remember when I spoke or taught during Yom Teruah, where I was talking about the fig tree and the fact that even though Yahshua knew that it was not the season for figs, he still approached the tree because it had leaves. And the fact that the leaves had survived through the winter means that there should have been some type of fruit. So even in this off season that we're in, what we do determines what, well, we should still be growing. We should still be producing. And yes, and so what we do can determine what we reap in the next season, in the next feast season. So even though we're in a time of, I guess, winter, the word says don't let your flight come on the Sabbath or in winter, we should still be growing. We should still be looking at ourselves. We should still be examining ourselves. We should still, we should allow this to be a time of introspection, a time where we really consider ourselves. So prayerfully, when the Day of Atonement rolls around again, we're not still asking for forgiveness for some of the same things, or we're not continuing to trip over the same stuff. We actually grow, and not saying that we don't have our issues, because we will, but after a while, some things get old. After a while, we should see growth. After a while, things should begin to change, and it shouldn't be the same things over and over. So on this road to wholeness, if I had a title today, it would be Flushing Out the Flesh. Flushing out the flesh. Because flesh is something that we all deal with and we all struggle with. Now, we're going to start one way and then we're going to shift and go another way, but it'll all make sense. And and I'm not just randomly pulling stuff. I am teaching. I'm not pulling a bunch of scriptures that pull on your emotions to make, oh, yes, yes, makes you feel. I'm not looking for an emotional high today. Not at all. So we're going to start out in Deuteronomy, or Devarim, and we are going to start at the 8th chapter. And I'll read it, and we'll get, like I said, there will be some interaction. We'll get to that point. So we're going to start at, like I said, 8th chapter, 1st verse. I'll read. And it says, guard to do every command which I command you today, that you might live and shall increase, and go in and shall possess the land of which Yahweh swore to your fathers. And you shall remember that Yahweh your Elohim led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, to prove you, or some Bibles may say to test you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not. And he humbled you and let you suffer hunger and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. Your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. Thus you shall know in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so Yahweh your Elohim disciplines you. Therefore you shall guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to fear him. We're going to stop right there. I want to go back up to verse 2. We'll go back up to verse 2. It says, and you shall remember that Yahweh your Elohim led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not. Because what I know is that just because I come in here on the Sabbath doesn't necessarily mean that I'm walking out the fullness as far as his commands. It means that I know the truth clearly, but it still doesn't necessarily mean that I'm completely carrying it out. So as I was reading this, one of the things that the Most High has been dealing with me with is that it says in that word to humble you. Humble meaning to develop your character. So what's happening is, or what we learn is that there's a certain amount of character that we all need to be successful to receive from Yah. In order to receive what Yah has for us, there's a certain amount of character that we need. We all have gifts. We all have gifts of the Spirit. And I've said this before. I've heard preachers say you don't ever want your gift to take you where your character cannot keep you. But oftentimes you see that. People get to places because they're very gifted. They're not anointed. They are gifted. And because they are gifted and they're allowed to reach certain places and go to certain places, they're not able to maintain. They're not able to sustain because their character, or they have no character, or their character is no good. But in order to develop character, that requires humility. So the Most High is saying, I brought you out here to humble you. And we're bringing this to today. We're talking about today. We're in an off season. In this off season, there should be some humbling in our lives that are taking place because we don't know it all and we don't have it all together. We just don't. As much as we think we know, there's still more that we can learn and more that we need to know. So he says, I'm developing your character, but in order for me to develop your character, that requires humility. So what I learned is that character is what? Character is who you really are. Who you really are. Who you really are is your character. Who people think you are is your reputation, or who people say you are is your reputation, or what you do whenever people aren't looking is your character, right? What you do when everybody is looking, that's reputation. So we're talking about character. And true humility is a proper understanding of who you are. So character is who you really are, and true humility is a proper understanding of who you are. So y'all brought us. So we're in this off season. We're in this off season. This is the time as the season we the last harvest, the pumpkin is usually, that's why you have so much pumpkin this time of year, because that's the last harvest for the year. And so now we go into that season where it's dry. The winter is a dry season. And for some people, it's a place of hunger. Usually people really struggle during the winter. As you know, there's some things that they say you don't do in the winter time. It just doesn't make sense because of the time of year that it is. It can also be considered a place of desperation, a place of hunger, a place of need. You think about the animals that store up the food that they'll need all year long so that in the winter they won't go hungry. I can remember growing up and my granddaddy had a garden. A lot of times in the garden we would pick a lot of the stuff and we didn't use it right away. My grandmother would can and freeze and all of that, and that would be in order to get us through the winter. And so during this season, during this time, what the Most High is saying is, I want you to continue to do a time of introspection, continue to examine yourself, because what I'm trying to do is restore you. I'm trying to restore you spiritually. I'm trying to develop your character. I'm trying to make you for this next season, because again, we don't want to keep tripping over the same stuff. It's time to grow. It's time to grow. So that brings me to the next point, which it says in the word. He said, I brought you out here to humble you, but not only to humble you, but to prove you or to test you. In other words, he wants to develop what we call, or what we know to be, self-awareness. That's what the text says. He did it to humble you or to test you. See, God builds character and self-awareness through test. And the purpose of the test is to what? Know what's in your heart. It says it right there in the word, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard my commands or not. Now, here's the thing. Yah doesn't test you because he doesn't know what's in your heart. He knows what's in your heart. Yah tests you because he wants you to know what's in your heart. Because a lot of times our hearts are jacked up and and we don't have it together, although we think we do. And sometimes self-awareness, that means examining yourself and being honest with yourself about what's going on. And so we have to constantly be corrected of our overestimation, or sometimes we estimate ourselves, or we think more highly of ourselves than we ought to. But Yah is saying, no, here's a time where I'm about to make you aware. It's time. You're going to have to deal what's in this season. I want you to deal with what's in your heart. And so whatever is in your heart, or whatever is in our hearts, is revealed because when it comes to character, who you are under pressure, if you want to know what's in your heart, one of the ways who you are under pressure is who you really are. So when you're under pressure, how do you act and how do you react? That's one sign of who you really are. So Yah is revealing things to us about ourselves, because the only thing worse than dealing with somebody that has issues is when there's somebody that doesn't know they have issues. And we've all dealt with people like that they got issues. You know they got, everybody know they got issues. We all know they got issues, but for whatever reason, they don't know that and they're hard to deal with, because you can't tell them anything. They haven't yet, there's no self-awareness. They haven't yet acknowledged what's in their heart. So Yah says, I allowed you to end up, you're here now. You're in this, because, the seasons, we go around and around. We're here now because what's in your heart needs to be exposed. The only way you're going to be self-aware, and the only way you're going to acknowledge it, first of all, the only way you're going to be aware of it is to acknowledge it. Once you acknowledge it and you're made aware of it, then you have to expose it, because the only way to deal with it is to expose it. You can't deal with what you won't acknowledge. You can't expose what you won't acknowledge. So what I've often seen and what I've often seen and often see is we're quick to say the enemy. And I've heard Rabbi Tu say this: we will blame things on the devil. We will the enemy, the enemy, the enemy. But what I've learned is that we need to start saying, no, the inner me, not the inner me. It's not the enemy. It's the inner me There's some things about the inner me that I have to address. There's some things in my heart. There's some things that I operate in fleshly that I need to address, because the overall thing is that we should be operating what? In the Ruach. We should be daily operating in the Ruach. So Proverbs 4:23 says what? Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. Just some scriptures about the heart. Proverbs 23:7 says, for as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And Proverbs 27:19 says, as in water face reflects face, so a man's heart reveals the man. I will say that again. As in water, face reflects face, so a man's heart reveals the man. So in this season, y'all saying, I need you to deal with it. Now, our its are all different. Your it ain't my it, and my it ain't your it, and what you struggle with, I may not struggle with, and what I struggle with, you don't. But whatever it is, this is an opportunity during this time to deal with it. A time of introspection, flushing out the flesh, because everything in life flows from your heart. And for so many of us, our hearts have become hard. And it's become hard to the issues that we deal with because we're not aware of them. And because we're not aware of them, we can't acknowledge them. But again, it's a time of introspection. So, Rabbis has been talking about it. She's talked about it in Tabernacles in time before, and maybe Rabbi too talked about the whole sin of iniquity and the sin of transgression. And, iniquity, the sin of iniquity, meaning you bending and you twist and you distort the truth. And the sin of transgression, which is just rebellion, whether it's out of ignorance or not. But what I've learned is that when a person continues to transgress, when a person continues to rebel against the commands and against Yah and against what his word is saying, then the law of iniquity, meaning that bent, twisted, and distorted truth, is created inside of them. When you continually rebel against his word, when a person continuously transgresses, then the law of iniquity is created in him. And so then what happens is you take the distorted truth and it becomes your practice. And you practice it to the point that it becomes pleasurable. So it's not even an issue for you because it feels good. You like it. You love it. And hey, it's your truth. Telling our truths is good, but we have to be very careful when we're dealing with people. That's like the new thing. Tell your truth. But everybody's truth ain't the truth. It's their truth, but it ain't the truth. And so that one gets me. Just make sure when you're telling your truth that you're telling the truth. Because, again, when you twist and you bend it, it could be your truth, but it could still be twisted, bent, and distorted. And a big lie, exactly. So then you take that distorted truth and it becomes your practice and it becomes pleasurable. So the iniquity has become transgression, but when we have played with it and practiced it for so long that it then becomes a weakness, so we yield to it, and the more we yield to it, then the more we become carnal. And so that's what I'm learning. A big part of the reason why we can't conquer certain things and we deal with these same things in the flesh and we trip over it year after year is because we're carnal. We are carnal because, again, that iniquity becomes transgression. We play with it, we practice it, we play around with it, and then it becomes a weakness, and then we start yielding to it, and all the while we're just becoming more and more carnal. And the more carnal we become, the more fleshly we become. But we say it says on the sign, this is MHD, where Torah is the Torah is spiritual. Ooh, if Torah is your lifestyle, then we need to really check that. Because yes, we're striving and we're not perfect and we make mistakes and we mess up. But it's one thing to make a mistake. It's another thing to intentionally continue to do something because you're living out your truth. It's my truth. It's my truth. So let's go into this about the flesh. Let's jump over to Romans. Let's jump over to Romans first. Because The law of the Torah is spiritual. But we want to make sure that we're operating in the Ruach and that we're not operating in the flesh and that we're really checking ourselves. Again, we are fleshing out the flesh. So we're going to go to the 8th chapter. And I just want to read. I'm going to read from KJV on this one. And it says I'll start at 1. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Yeshua and who walk after the flesh, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the Torah of the Spirit of life in Yeshua have made me free from the Torah of sin and death, or from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, and this is one that I have to point out and read slowly. Verse 3, for what the law could not do in that it was weak through the flesh. And I take my time with that one because that was one I've had to point out to people because they say that, well, the law is not, no. For what the law could not do in that it was weak through the flesh, not that it was weak, but through the flesh, Yah sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace, because the carnal mind is enmity against Yah, for it is not subject to the law of Yah, neither indeed can be. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please Yah, but ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of Yah dwell in you. Now if any man have not the Spirit of Yeshua, he is none of his. So let's jump back to Galatians now. Just wanted to read that because I want to hit that the carnal mind, and it tells us right there that the law that is spiritual and that we should be operating in the Spirit and not the flesh. So let's jump over to Galatians and we'll go to the 5th chapter. And we're going to pick up at the 16th verse. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that you cannot do the things that you would. But if ye be led of the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such alike, which is everything else, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in times past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom or the reign of Elohim. We're going to stop right there. So back up in here, it says that for the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that you cannot do the things that ye would. But, okay, so we'll stop right there, because we know that the flesh and the Spirit are contrary to one another. And I wanted to stop right there because I just want to take a little bit of time to explain this. And just also to make sure I understand it. I hear myself saying it out loud, and just in case somebody else needs to. So we know we're a body, we're a soul, and a spirit, right? And so we have our body and we have our spirit, and our soul is caught in between. So we have to be very careful. Again, we're fleshing out the flesh. We're walking in the Spirit. We're walking in the Ruach always. And so the soul can be caught in between the body and the spirit. And this is something that I've been working on myself. So I'm also just going through this really quick. We know that the word says what? We were born in, well, they say it like this in the church. You're born in sin and shaped in iniquity. But the scripture doesn't quite say it that way. But essentially that's what David is saying. And so we talked about that sin of iniquity and how those things become pleasurable because we practice them, right? Okay, so when you got the body and you got the spirit and you got the soul in between the two. You have to be very careful what you feed the body, because the body feeds the spirit and the spirit gives it to the soul. The other night now everybody knows that I'm going through a separation, right? Okay, and I'm trying to live righteous. I really am. So I was looking at this movie, y'all. I was looking at this movie, and the movie was really, really good until they got to a certain point. And Mekhi Phifer was in the movie, and that brother to me is very fine, very good looking chocolate man. And when they got to this point in the movie, him and this woman, they were going at it, and they was going hard. And I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, my goodness. I had to throw the whole movie away. I had to turn it off. I had to just turn it off. I just had to turn it completely off and just sit there and pray. I was like, oh, my goodness. Oh, because the thing about it is that if I had continued to watch it, then I would have been feeding my flesh. But I would have been feeding my flesh something that it doesn't need. So now I'm not with my husband. I don't have a husband. So it's probably some things I don't want to be taking part in. But if I sit there and I feed that to my flesh, then my flesh feeds it to my spirit, and then my spirit gives it to my soul, right? So then whenever things start happening, and then like I come, and you know how we come in service and we want to command our heart to praise and we want to command our soul to praise, but the soul is just like not doing anything, and it's like I'm really trying to enter in, but for whatever reason I just can't get there. And I'm like, soul, will you praise Yah? And the soul is saying, I don't know what you want me to do, because all I have is what you fed me all week. And you didn't exactly feed me anything that was spiritual. You fed me a bunch of junk this week, but now you want me to give you back the word? You didn't give me the word. You didn't feed your body, your flesh, the word. Your flesh didn't give it to your spirit, and your spirit didn't give it to your soul. And so then we see that happen so much. And then a lot of times we can't get breakthrough. We should be able to enter into the presence of Yah at any time. We should be able to pray. We should be seeing all these things happen, as we can't get breakthroughs. We can't get deliverance ourselves. We having to call and pull on other people because we haven't fed our flesh anything. It hasn't given our spirit anything, and our soul is dying. And so we're flushing out the flesh. We need to feed it the word. Because if the only time you look at this is on Shabbat, you're not considering it, so it's not manifesting in your life. It's not. If you're not joining, if you're not doing the call on Tuesday night, which will be Bible study, now you don't have to join the call. But if you be honest, some of you, if you join the call, it forces you to at least listen in. The other night I was working, but I was able to listen. And many times, because life happens and you get so busy, you don't touch that during the week like you should. If you be honest, sometimes. You be honest. So, flushing out the flesh. All right, so we about done. Let's get through this. So then we see what verse 16 said. Let's jump down to verse 19, because we want to talk about the works of the flesh. And then I'm going to sit down. Because if we're going to flush it out, we got to know what it is. We need to know how it works. We need to identify it within ourselves. You ain't got to stand up and say it's me, because again, my it ain't your it. But when we talk about these things, you know whether or not it's you. And if it's something that you need to deal with, then you need to deal with it. Because some stuff gets old. Again, I've said that, but it really does. Like, are we still drinking milk? When are we going to start eating meat? So, Shaul said, well, I won't do it that way. Not doing that. So the word says, in the Bible, it says that the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these. Just want to give you a little bit of information. So he uses the word works of the flesh. The Greek word is ergos, for works. And this word signifies some type of action, some type of deed or activity. So very often it's referred to as a person's occupation, to one's labor, or to the things produced by someone's effort or their life, something that their life produces or their effort produces. It describes a person's line of work, his career, his labor, or his profession. So it denotes the results of his hard work. So it's this word works is connected to flesh, because what it's telling us is just like a person has a career or a profession and they work hard to achieve results, the flesh, if it is allowed to go its own way and do what it wants, will work very hard to produce fleshly results. So when the flesh is not surrendered to the ruach, it will work around the clock, 24 hours a day, to produce fruit that is hurtful, damaging, and even deadly. This is why we can't operate in the flesh, and we have to make sure that we're surrendering to the ruach. And what I'm understanding, now I know in church they'll say you've been filled and that's it, but sometimes we need a refill. That is not a one-time deal, because you could get up tomorrow and decide that you want to operate in the flesh. And if you're operating in the flesh, then you can't, the flesh and the spirit are contrary. You can't operate in both at the same time. It's just not possible. So that word flesh is a Greek word, sarx, which means simple impulse, or used to depict simple impulses and carnal cravings. So works of the flesh was worded that way to give the idea that the flesh has its own minds and its desires. The flesh does. It has its own mind and it has its own desires. And so if it has its own mind and its own desires, that means that you can't always control it, and you need the help of the ruach in order to bring it under subjection. The word tells you to crucify it and to bring it under subjection. So let's talk about it. The works of the works of the flesh. The first one that he says, he says it's manifest. Let me say this. That word manifest, the Greek word phaneros, which means to appear, to manifest, to become visible, to become apparent, to become seen, to be well known, or to become conspicuous. So when you operate in the flesh, we all see you. I had a situation, and I'll say this to y'all because I can. At my wedding, something happened. And that person tried to say that, well, when God says go, I say go. Or when the Spirit says move, I move. And nothing that she did was spiritual. That was fleshly. And we all seen it. And that's why we still, 16, 17 years later, talk about it and laugh. And was like, oh my goodness, did she just blame that on the Spirit? Yes, she did. No, that was the flesh. That wasn't the ruach. That was fleshly. So, all right, so here we go. The first one that it says is adultery. What is adultery? And I'm asking a question. Like, I'm asking y'all. What is adultery? What is it talking about here? Somebody tell me. I'm going to write it on the board. Adultery. Lord, let me make sure I spell it right. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Adultery. I'm listening. Oh, did I spell it? Ooh, no. Adultery. Come on, y'all. Adulter. Oh, I'm working. Okay. Hey, spelling wasn't on. I didn't win the spelling bees. More Shamika did. All right. Adultery. Anybody? Anybody have a definition for adultery? Nobody? Y'all don't know what adultery is? We write it again. Would y'all agree with that? It's not a trick question. I was just engaging the audience is all. So would you agree that it's like an unlawful sexual relationship between a man and a woman, or no? Yes? Yes, Rabbi too? Okay. You said unlawful. Unlawful sexual relationship between a man and a woman. Unlawful being the key. All right. Unlawful. And I won't put that. We just, right? Yes. Right. Sure. That might be more idolatry. Or no, maybe. We'll get to that one. But, okay. Gotcha. Right. True. I'm sure. All right. So adultery, fornication, or some Bibles may say what whoring. Yes. Some the scriptures say or says whoring, and depending on what translation it may say fornication. What is whoring, or does anybody know what that is? Whoring or fornication? Okay. I don't want kids to have to be looking at that word the whole time. Rabbi Two said sexual relationships with no covering, with no covenant. Okay. And this is what I try, and I'm very transparent. I'll just tell y'all the truth. I ain't gonna lie to you. You ask me, I'll tell you. This is what I was trying to avoid. That's why I just threw the whole movie away. Just threw it away. All right. Ain't no point looking at it again. Okay. Uncleanness. Uncleanness. I don't want y'all to go to sleep on me. Uncleanness. 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 Right. It is. And I ask that because I know when you talk about the clean and the unclean, and I think that's one of the things that Rabbi too we touched on a little bit last week with the leper. What might it in this text? What Yes, when it's talking about the works of the flesh. Yes, sir. Monthly separation out of baby. Morally impure. You said morally impure? Okay. Yeah. Morally impure. Okay. Right. Could things like um homosexuality or sodomy or things like that fall under uncleanness? Yeah. Uncleanness. Okay. All right. The next one says what? Lasciviousness. And I heard a teacher say one time, don't ever name your, he said, Hebrew people, this is not a name. Don't name your child. Because you know how we are. We creative. What's on that girl? Her name lasciviousness. I mean, I found it in the Bible. Yeah, we call her Lala for short. You know, you know how we do. That's what is lasciviousness? Okay, what else might it be? Say it again. Okay. Okay. Praying. That's what sort of what she was saying. Okay. Okay. You said say that again. Okay. Got you. I wanted to make sure I heard that right. Yeah. Okay. Because some people will say, "Well, I didn't commit adultery. I didn't commit fornication," but you did everything up to that point. Yeah, they're shameless. Okay. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I got that right there. Yeah. An indecent act, gesture, or expression. Okay. So those first three are yeah. Yes. So those are the okay. So those first three tie into um sexual relation. And as the list goes on, it changes up. The next one says idolatry, right? Idolatry. And we know that that is what? Worshiping other gods, creating other gods, building images or deities, worshiping other, worshiping spirits maybe, or yes, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Graven images, extreme passions, or it says anything on which our extreme passions and affections are set. You can make people your God. To trust in people more than you trust in Yah. Hmm. Yeah. Yes. That's a yeah. That's a good one. Yes, sir. Okay. Witchcraft. One thing I know is when you embark on trying to find or know your future from somebody other than the Most High. Palm readings and I think when not when Samuel, but when Saul went and asked him to call up Samuel. What else is witchcraft? Sorcery, medication, and using medication to bring spiritual feelings. Yes, and that's where that word comes. What is it, pharmakia? Yes, And so when you do that, even with witchcraft, you open the door for Hasatan to work. So you know the people are like, oh, I want to talk to my uncle. Familiar spirits, okay, whatever. And that's when people say that. Well, my uncle, my mama came. I ain't never seen my mama since she passed, and I don't want to see her. I don't. She came in my room. Nah, mine didn't come in my room. She didn't. Because you're dealing with familiar spirits, and it's not of the Most High. And you taking on other spirits. You thought that was your, no. I don't know what that is, but you might need to be seeking the Most High because something ain't right. Because once they die and they're in, they're resting there. They have no desire to come back here. No desire. But people will say that, and I'm like, no, I'll pass. Now I might dream about it, yes, but. And something I noticed, even with my dreams, when I do dream about my mom, she never, because people are like, oh, she talks. Yes, she never talks. For me, she never talks. And that's a good thing. I want you to talk. Don't talk. Don't talk. Don't talk to me. You're there, but don't you say a word. Okay. So let's get into some more, the ones that we see more and more. All right, come on, let's be real. Let's be real. Hatred. Some of them that we see in our assemblies and in our congregations, we see these a little. We ain't talking about the strangers. We talking about amongst each other. Hatred, intense hostility from fear, anger, or having hostility towards someone, maybe when you oppose them. What are you saying? Okay, what'd you say? We're gonna get to that one. we're gonna make sure we put that one in proper because we see that a lot. Lack of forgiveness or extreme, dislike, hatred. Reason for opposition. Even when you don't have a reason. Yes. Reason for opposition. And again, we see that, but it's a work of the flesh. So if we're operating in hatred, then we're not operating in the Ruach. And so that means that we're not pleasing to Yah, because he's not pleased he's not pleased with the carnal mind or with the flesh. All right, variance. I think one in the Greek, this word can be contentions. You know those people that always disagree? Everything. They sow division and discord to quarrel. Everything is a problem. Always fussing. Always a but. Always a no. Always something. Always in conflict. Always debating. Always. It can never just be a yes, or we'll say that. Put a yes, Lord, a yes, Yah in my spirit. No. Or I want a yes. Do you really? Because that's what that is. A license to be contrary. Variance. Okay. Emulations. One definition said indignant. You just indignant. Resentment against a rival. What anybody know what else? Oh, wait a minute. Striving to excel, to be better than the rest. Yes. And that's emulations. What does it mean to be indignant? Somebody tell me what that means. What does it mean to be indignant? Yeah. Even when you wrong. Even when you wrong. And know you wrong. Like you said, don't move your neighbor's landmark. No, you know the truth, but you just want to be right. Forget the truth. It's about being right. Okay. Wrath. Is that next? Wrath? What is wrath? Rage. You used to hear people say a short fuse or a quick temper. Don't take much to set you off. Explosive anger. You just explode. Emulations. You blow up in words or you blow up in actions, domestic or civil turmoils. That's emulation. Strife. What is strife? Strife. And we deal with these things because if we didn't, it wouldn't be in the word. So we deal with them and we see them happen. Even when we don't say anything, even when we overlook, oh, that's just how they are. It's time out for that. We're in a season, we're flushing out the flesh. It's time to grow. I'm tired of, oh, well, he's still working on me. Well, I wish he would hurry up because I'm tired. So I know other people are. Of course, we can't make the Most High do anything, but the excuses get old. So strife, strong hostile feelings, disagreeable, selfish ambition, self-centered, yes, lack of humility, always got an issue, always got a beef with somebody, always, argumentative, always debating, again, quarreling, it's just always an issue. If that's you, then you need to deal with your strife. Because it's there. Whether it be here, whether it be at home. And especially if it's at home. Let me tell you something. Charity begins at home. So you can come in here and you can, and then you act like the royal, at home. It's no good either. And a lot of times with us as parents, what I've learned, you have to be careful because your children tell on you because you be all, and they be looking like, or the reverse. Be careful what you do and how you handle things at home because your children will tell on you. Yes, they will. They talk. They talk. They do. So we have to be careful with that. Okay. That was what? Strife. Seditions. Seditions. What's seditions? Seditions? Maybe seditions. Not supportive. Don't help the program. Ain't no team with you because you I. Or me. Like, what is it? Welcome home, Roscoe Jenkins, the team of me. No. Rebellious, you won't submit to authority at all. It ain't happening. Seditions, you work in divisions and cliques to sow discord among the people. We see that a lot. Break up friends, you have social cliques, you stir up trouble and discontentment. You whisper a lot. Seditions, you whisper. I can't stand them people that's always, what you whispering about? What are you whispering? No, you know how, we all want to hear it. Can you tell us all? Tell us as a collectively what you're talking about. Yeah, or you think you're whispering. Sowing discord. Yes. Sowing discord. But if we're going to unite together as one, we can't sow discord. And that's big for us. Well, they said this, but what I really think. Well, anybody ask you, my uncle with his special self, one of them, he would say sometimes, it's like, well, what makes what you said right? And I'm not saying this is right, but I would be like, well, why does it make it right? Because you said, and he would say, because I'm the bishop. And if it was supposed to come to you from you, then God would have made you the bishop. Now, I'm not saying that that's right, but what I am saying is that we have leaders and we trust that the Most High has called them and he's given them the knowledge and the wisdom and the understanding that they need. So if they're teaching it, don't go sow discord among the people because you don't agree with it or because you don't like it. And then there's always the alternative. You know how we do. Well, we'll leave the church and go start. I'm going to start my own church. Okay, well, you go start it. Start my own. Seditions. Heresies. Heresies. It's heresies. We're almost to the bottom of the list. What's heresies? Heresies. The act of taking, capture. Is that what you said? That is true. You know one thing? Another way of uh, capturing with false doctrine. Yes. Dissension that arises from, you said, diversity in opinions and opinions. You know what they say about opinions? I ain't going to say it, but y'all know. And they just like, and everybody has got one. Everybody. But it doesn't necessarily, okay, but it's, again, and it's, the word says it, works of the flesh. All right, envyings. Oh, we need to just write this one B, because that word jealousy falls under this one. And oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Jealousy, a heart of jealousy filled with envy. You want what the other person has, or you resent somebody, or somebody do something. You can't pay a compliment. You can't good job. You led worship well this morning. You did well. You decorated well. You I don't know. You don't let that person shine. And you ain't shining. You can't get I'm a shit. No, you ain't getting the light. No, move. No. Can they have that 5 minutes of fame? Jealousy, ill will, and spite. Spite and ill will. Spiteful. Have you ever dealt with a spiteful person? I have. It's not fun. Yes. Hmm. Yes. Jealousy. And so one thing that I thought about, or the Most High showed me, was he's a jealous Yah. So you think about how a jealous person acts. So if he's a jealous Yah, imagine, yeah, or not imagine, just think about how he feels whenever we have everything before him. You know the measures that a jealous person will go through when we put everything before him. When we honor and acknowledge everything but him. When we study and consider everything but him and his word. Murder, we know what murder is, right? To take life, to kill. And now one other way you can murder is with your tongue. Have to be with that murder. Watch your tongue, because what you say can really destroy people. It can tear people down. It can kill people. I've seen people leave churches and leave places because of something somebody said, and they never return. Character assassination. Yes. With murder. Watch what comes out of your mouth. Yes, it does. Yes, that falls under that. But especially be my life and death in the power of the tongue. Be careful what you speak. We should, like your post said the other day, we should only be what? Speaking life? Only speak life. Only. And if you can't speak life, or my grandmother, that's one thing she practiced. If you don't have anything good to say, just say nothing. And she practiced that, and she did that. My grandmother was not a gossiper. I've never seen her sit around and talk about that. Was not her thing. She didn't do it. She didn't do it. Just keep your mouth closed. Be quiet. Something else she taught us, which isn't tied to this, but I just thought about it, is, of course, and we know the word says it takes 6 months to mind your business and 6 to leave other, or I think, does the Bible say that, or did we just told the Bible said that? Either way, she would tell us short visits make long friendships. So she would be like, you're going to be sitting up in somebody's house all the time. Go home. And she did. We didn't do that visiting. Oh, we're going to come over to such and, oh, they invited us. Yeah, we didn't do too much visiting. You go home. Because then people be glad to see you come, and they hate to see you go. You know how you had them people, you glad to see them come. No, you hate to see them come, but you glad to see them go. All right, that's a little bit off. Revelings. Come on, revelings. Revelings. What's revelings? Yes, drunkenness. Yes. I think I used to fall under this one. I don't fall under this one ain't my it no more. Drunkenness. Yes. Intoxication. A party hard spirit. Yes. That falls under it. Yes. Yeah. Pity party. And it's okay to have a pity party, but you pity and then you get up. You don't wallow in it, like you said. You don't stay there. Activities given to pleasure. Mardi Gras falls under revelings. That's why they always do it right before Ash went. That's funny, y'all. And then everybody runs to the to the church on Ash Wednesday and put the ashes on it to get forgiveness for everything they did that week. And I heard Mardi Gras. I've never been to Mardi Gras, but I heard it was wild. Yeah, what happened? So revelings. So after Paul says that, and then after the word says that, it then says, and such alike, or such like. So that's everything that falls under, because we name so many different things under each one of these works of the flesh. But the thing about it all is that what it says in the word, that I tell you before, as I've also told you in time past, that they which do such things, they which practice these things, which practice, shall not inherit the reign of Elohim. That's the main point. And so that's all I have. It may not have been the most, and this was because my thing was, okay, I'm learning how to teach the word, because I like to just, but a lot of times when you do that, people may not catch it all. But these are the works of the flesh. And so if we're going to flush out the flesh, first of all, you got to, and I hope nobody say, oh no, I don't fall under none of that, because now you just a liar. And Revelation tell you where the liars go. They got a place. So if you sit here at any point, honey, she ain't talking about me at all, because I ain't in none of that. Well, because if we be honest, we find ourselves somewhere, but what we want to do is acknowledge it, make ourselves aware of it, expose it, deal with it, so that we can grow. The word says to grow in grace and in the knowledge of Yeshua. Grow in it. We've got to grow. And so that's what I have for you today. That's all I have for you today. I want to inherit the reign. I don't know about anybody else. I've set before you this day life and death. Well, he said to be carnally minded is death. But he said y'all said what? Choose life. So that means choose the Ruach. Choose to walk in the spirit, in the Ruach, so that you're not fulfilling the lust of the flesh.
but I pray that you will help me believe. I'll be still, I will listen to your voice, I'll be patient, and I'll move to the rhythm of the song. I'll be still.